Savior. But he also did something that most people don't know about. He made a prophecy about Jesus that was shockingly accurate. What was this prophecy, and how could an enemy of Jesus prophesize about him? Well, you might want to stick around right until the end of this video to find out about the shocking new discovery made by archaeologists. But before we get to that, make sure that you take a moment to subscribe so we can make God the biggest channel in the world. Now let's get into it. In December 1990, bulldozers were at work as they cleared land in the Peace Forest just south of Jerusalem to make way for a water park. But that's when they made a shocking find. Workers unexpectedly unearthed an ancient tomb. The Israel Antiquities Authority was immediately called in to investigate. Inside the tomb, archaeologists found several ossuaries, two of which bore variations of the name Caiaphas, a name familiar from the New Testament Gospels as the high priest during the Saviour's trial and crucifixion. Given the tomb's proximity to Jerusalem and the significance of the name, some scholars have speculated that this tomb may have belonged to the family of the infamous high priest. The Jewish historian Josephus recorded that Caiaphas's given name was Joseph. In the tomb, one ossuary was inscribed with Joseph bar Caiaphas. The Aramaic word bar translates to son of, but often means descendant of or from the family of. Since Caiaphas was a family name, Joseph bar Caiaphas refers to Joseph Caiaphas. Scientific analysis of the bones found in this ossuary determined they belonged to a man around 60 years old. This suggests that the ossuary might have contained the remains of the same Caiaphas who served as high priest at the time of Jesus Christ's death. In the Bible, specifically in the Gospel of John, it is the high priest Caiaphas who unknowingly makes a prophecy about Jesus. The context is that some Pharisees, chief priests, and members of the Sanhedrin began plotting Jesus' death. They feared that if Jesus were allowed to continue unchallenged, people would believe in him and follow him in large numbers, leading to an uprising and a subsequent Roman attack. This, they worried, would result in the destruction of the Jewish nation. But did you know that this very fear became a reality in AD 70 with the destruction of the Temple and Jerusalem, although it wasn't caused by Jesus' teachings or people following him? Instead, it happened because of the Jews' lack of faith and rejection of Jesus and his teachings. It occurred precisely because people did not follow him. Faced with the perceived threat Jesus posed, the Jewish leaders gathered to conspire against him. During their meeting, Caiaphas, the high priest, unknowingly made this prophecy: "You know nothing, nor do you consider that it is better for you that one man should die instead of the people, so that the whole nation may not perish." Caiaphas was thinking that it was far better for Jesus to be killed than for the Jewish nation to be destroyed by Rome. However, St. John reveals the deeper, unintended truth in Caiaphas' words. He did not say this on his own, but since he was high priest for that year, he prophesied that Jesus was going to die for the nation, and not only for the nation, but also to gather into one the dispersed children of God. Jesus was going to die to bring together his scattered children into the church, making them members of his body and adopted sons and daughters of God. This was accomplished through his saving passion, death and resurrection, known as the Paschal mystery of Christ. Now, here's where things get interesting. In the gospel narratives, Caiaphas is often depicted negatively, particularly for his role in the crucifixion of Jesus. Caiaphas' prophecy regarding Jesus' death and its redemptive significance is quite intriguing. How could Caiaphas, portrayed as an unrighteous figure, prophesy about Jesus' salvific death and then immediately conspire to kill him? Caiaphas' statement about Jesus' death, in its original context, was a political comment by the Jewish high priest. It was John who interpreted Caiaphas' words as relating to the Saviour's atonement, an intention that Caiaphas himself likely did not have. When the Israelites escaped from Pharaoh's oppression in Egypt, the Lord offered them the opportunity to accept the fullness of the priesthood and the gospel. The author of Hebrews noted that the gospel was preached to us as well as to them. Unfortunately, the Israelites rebelled and lost that privilege. The Lord revealed to the prophet Joseph Smith that Moses plainly taught to the children of Israel in the wilderness about this higher law and sought to sanctify them so they could see God, but they hardened their hearts. As a result, the Lord removed Moses and the holy priesthood from their midst, leaving them with the lesser priesthood, which focused on the law of carnal commandments. This lesser priesthood's main role was to oversee the duties and ordinances related to the tabernacle and later the temples of Solomon and Herod. It was only to be held by males from the tribe of Levi. The law of Moses mentions Levites, priests, and the high priest concerning those authorized to perform the duties of the Levitical priesthood. Levites, who were male descendants of Levi, primarily assisted the priests and maintained the temple's cleanliness. Priests who were male descendants of Moses' brother Aaron were responsible for offering animal sacrifices and teaching the people according to the law of Moses. Only one high priest served at a time, and he was the firstborn male descendant of Aaron, acting as the presiding official of the Levitical priesthood. It's important to note that the Levitical priesthood was not conferred based on personal righteousness, but rather by lineage. As the author of Hebrews explained, no one takes this honor upon himself. He must be called by God, just as Aaron was. By the time of Jesus, the high priest was appointed by the ruling Roman authority rather than by firstborn status or direct descent from Aaron. According to Josephus, Caiaphas, who was not the son of the previous high priest, was appointed as high priest in AD 18 by the Roman governor Valerius Gratus, who preceded Pontius Pilate. But what do we actually know about this biblical figure and his life? Well, not much is recorded about Caiaphas. According to the historian Josephus, in 86, the Syrian legate Quirinius appointed a high priest named Ananus, who is likely the same high priest Annas mentioned in the New Testament. The Gospel of John notes that Annas was the father-in-law of Caiaphas. Instead of waiting for Annas to pass away to appoint a new high priest, the Roman governor Valerius Gratus removed Annas in AD 15 and appointed his son Eleazar, who had already served as high priest before. After deposing and appointing another high priest, Gratus eventually appointed Joseph Caiaphas as high priest in AD 18. As high priest, Caiaphas held the highest authority in the Sanhedrin, the Jewish ruling council, and was likely a member of the Sadducees, a Jewish religious sect. The Sanhedrin was made up of about 70 educated Jewish men and served as the highest judicial court for Jewish matters in Palestine. The Sadducees were primarily from wealthy priestly families and did not focus on supernatural beliefs like angels, demons, life after death, the resurrection, or predestination. Now, what led Caiaphas to make his famous statement about Jesus' death? To truly grasp the significance of his words, we must first examine the events leading up to his declaration. Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, siblings from Bethany, were dear friends of Jesus. While Jesus was in Galilee with his disciples, he received word that Lazarus was gravely ill. However, instead of rushing to Bethany, Jesus stayed in Galilee for 2 more days. By the time he arrived, Lazarus had been dead for 4 days. This delay, seemingly intentional, set the stage for a powerful teaching moment. When Jesus discussed Lazarus' death with his disciples, he said, "Lazarus is dead, and I am glad for your sakes that I was not there, so that you may believe, but let us go to him." This statement suggests that Jesus purposefully waited to create a moment that would strengthen the faith of his disciples. The Gospel of John emphasizes that Lazarus has been in the tomb for 4 days by the time Jesus arrived. The significance of Lazarus being dead for 4 days cannot be understated. If Jesus had arrived immediately and raised Lazarus, skeptics might have questioned the legitimacy of the miracle. But after 4 days, there was no doubt. Lazarus was truly dead, and his resurrection was undeniably miraculous. When Jesus ordered the stone to be removed from the tomb, Martha, Lazarus' sister, warned, "Lord, by this time he smells, and he has been dead 4 days." The resurrection was clear proof that Jesus was indeed the resurrection and the life. This miracle, however, also drew attention of Jesus' enemies, including Caiaphas, who, although not a witness, was fully aware of what had occurred. The Gospel of John recounts how, after Jesus raised Lazarus, many who witnessed the miracle believed in him. But not everyone was convinced. Some who saw the event reported it to the Pharisees. This led to the chief priests and Pharisees to convene and discuss the situation, asking, "What shall we do? For this man performs many signs." The resurrection of Lazarus was a turning point. News of this miracle spread rapidly throughout Jerusalem, and Lazarus became a living testament to Jesus' divine power. This growing influence and the increasing number of followers troubled the Sanhedrin, the Jewish ruling council, leading them to view Jesus as a significant threat. The Gospel of John notes that because of Lazarus, many Jews began to believe in Jesus. This caused deep concern among the Jewish leaders, who feared that if Jesus' popularity continued to rise, it might lead to unrest, drawing the attention of the Romans, who could respond by destroying the temple and punishing the Jewish people. When the Sanhedrin convened to address this situation, Caiaphas, the high priest, made a decisive statement. "It's better for you that one man should die for the people, and not that the whole nation should perish." This statement, though politically motivated, took on a prophetic significance that Caiaphas likely did not intend. The Gospel of John suggests that Caiaphas' words were not entirely his own, but were influenced by his position as the high priest that year. While Caiaphas was primarily concerned with preventing a potential uprising and safeguarding his own political power, his statement inadvertently foreshadowed a larger significance of Jesus' death. Caiaphas' prophecy, as interpreted by John, implied that Jesus' death would not only prevent the destruction of the Jewish nation, but would also have a broader spiritual significance, gathering together the scattered children of God. However, Caiaphas' original intent was more pragmatic. He viewed Jesus' death as a necessary measure to prevent Roman retaliation and to protect the temple, a key source of income for him and other members of the Sanhedrin. In essence, Caiaphas was more focused on political survival than on the pursuit of justice, seeing Jesus' execution as a way to secure his own position